You're listening to the Staging Sips podcast with Lori Fisher. This podcast is dedicated to helping real estate staging CEOs build healthy businesses that grow, flow, and thrive. Hey, everybody, just popping in before this episode starts to let you know some really great news. And that is that Rethink You Accelerate, the doors are opening for enrollment on September 22nd, 2023 at the time of this recording. So for those of you who have been waiting and reaching out, September 22nd, mark your calendar. Now, if you want to get in a little bit early, I am offering open enrollment to my waiting list a little bit earlier so that people on the waiting list as a thank you can have the access to an extra call this month with the Rethink You community. So if you want to get on the waiting list, go to rethinkhomeinteriors.com/wait list in order to get there so that you get early access. So I just want to tell you very quickly a little bit about Rethink You Accelerate and why you want to put it on your calendar and make a plan to join us. Rethink You Accelerate includes two key components. And the first is our learning environment, where there are modules on demand that you can start accessing right away to start growing your business more strategically. But also inside there is the Swipe Studio, which is unbelievable. And it's probably my students' favorite part of the curriculum. And that is access to templates for, contract templates, hiring templates, job applications, job descriptions, all of that good stuff, team meeting agendas, all of it, like literally every template and everything you would need to grow your business through the accelerate phase of business is in there for you. In addition, we have twice a month calls with our community where we troubleshoot, we think creatively, we help one another with resources and help you stay engaged in your business, because sometimes it can feel pretty damn lonely when you're building it by yourself. This way you don't have to recreate the wheel. You can get resources without having to do all the legwork and the research. So it really accelerates your results when you join Rethink You Accelerate. So September 22nd, 2023, mark your calendar, get ready, and get yourself in a seat in our classroom. All right, on to the episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I hope you are having an amazing week wherever you are. This week, I want to talk about growing your staging business slowly and how that can be such an advantage to you. I know, you hear it all the time, and mostly bro culture. No offense to bros, love the bros, but that mantra of like go fast and break things, that may be fine for tech, but probably not for a staging business. And I really want to spend some time talking about this because slow growth can appear in many ways throughout the life of your staging business. Certainly in the beginning, when we open our businesses and we just get started, it can feel very discouraging when we aren't booking clients as quickly as we would like, as well as when we get further into our businesses and we start booking the calendar out and then we start hiring team, and then we don't have the growth maybe to support having that team in place year round. Or if we decide we're going to launch a new product or service line as another income stream in our business and we're starting that from scratch, slow growth comes up a lot throughout your business journey. So I wanted to touch on it today. I wanted to touch on the fallacy of growing fast, growing quickly. And I wanted to talk about, in addition, how can we manage our minds better around slow growth, and what are the advantages to growing slowly so that when you are in it, you can look at it from a more positive perspective. Because as we know from neuroscience, when we can stay in the positive mindset, it's been demonstrated over and over again, we learn better, we make better decisions, we can think more creatively, which then helps us support our business growth. So I am all about helping you create a business that not only thrives, but that you thrive within it. And most of that is managing your brain as you go. So let's dive into it today. So first of all, I know slow growth for most of us is not what we want. I mean, the goal is to fill the calendar. And for most of us, myself included, that would mean ideally filling it pretty quickly, like opening the doors to, your business or a new service line, or you've just hired a new team and you want to see appointments start hitting the calendar at a faster rate. Obviously that is a goal that is very desirable, but it's not what you're envisioning it to be. Fast growth is not always what it seems to be. And it can actually really, really suck. And slow growth is really part of creating a solid business. And I can share this because I know what's on the horizon, and my whole goal is to help you navigate what's ahead, as always, with anything that I do. So today, really what I want to do is help you flip your thinking if fast growth has been your goal. And I want you to learn the key thought error that you might have around growing quickly, what can happen when you grow too quickly, and some of the lessons you can learn and the advantages you can have from slow growth. So have you ever learned anything to do something new and gain proficiency at it? Like a new skill, and whether it's, a lot of people are playing pickleball these days, or maybe it's something from your childhood that you did, whether it was a sport or dance or music. And if you remember back, like my oldest son, Zach, is a guitar player. He's an incredible guitar player, but we started him at the age of 3 with Suzuki lessons. And when he started his Suzuki lessons, he had to start by learning how to hold the guitar and how to bow with the guitar and how to sit with the guitar and how to play each string with one of his fingers and then 2 of his fingers. And obviously that gradually progressed to the musician that he is today. Just like learning any new skill, learning business as you go and grow has its periods of time where you actually need to slow down so that you can learn the basics and the fundamentals and put the infrastructure into place so that you can move forward in a quicker way, having that strong foundation. So imagine if Zach started at the age of 3 with Suzuki lessons, having to learn how to, finger pick with multiple fingers and learn the left hand and the right hand all at the same time. And there was no learning how to sit with the guitar correctly or hold it correctly or put his hands in the correct positioning. None of that would work. I mean, I was giving someone the example of learning how to do downhill skiing. And when we do downhill skiing, we don't even start people learning how to ski down a hill with poles. Poles can be very confusing. And we start by teaching slowly with, putting your skis in like a V position and slowly going down the mountain. But if somebody said, okay, what you need to do is you need to put your body facing down the mountain, but your skis have to turn parallel to the mountain. And then when you get to a certain point on the mountain, the side, you're going to turn immediately. You're going to pick your upper pole into the ground to help you turn. And like all the things that come with really skiing at a proficient level, you'd quit right away. So we don't actually even have the capacity in the beginning of our businesses or even early in hiring and growing our teams to grow quickly. So imagine right now if clients started calling you and you started booking out today, what that could look like. I want to ask you like a series of questions. Do you have the time to accommodate for the reality of that? Do you have the infrastructure, the inventory, the processes and staff to onboard? Invoice, send client agreements, follow up, schedule all the steps of the service delivery, send reports, pull, pack, deliver, install, destage, restock, manage staff, maintain inventory, maintain vehicles, create new policies and procedures, analyze data and profitability, train, handle complaints, promote your work, pay your bills, manage your bookkeeping, answer the phones, respond to emails, texts, DMs, while hands-on staging is happening without your involvement in every step or most steps of that process. Whoo! Really? Do you have the bandwidth for that? I mean, it's just stressing me out reading all of that. And that is the reality of what comes with a robust, busy business. If you don't have the capacity for all of that or any of that, then you're going to be absolutely miserable. You're going to be burned out. And we don't need this. The world needs stagers. They need your talents. They need businesses that are sustainable, that are profitable, that are on the path to profitability. If you're not quite there yet, we need teams that are excellent at what they do, but have time to learn how to be excellent at what they do. So the thought error is that faster is better. But faster and not prepared is a recipe for disaster, for the wheels falling off the bus. So now that I have painted that picture of what fast growth can look like / do to your business, let's talk about how to manage your brain better for when growth is slower than expected. And then we'll talk about the advantages to growing slowly. So let's keep your brain from flipping out, because it will. And I want to dive into 2 key concepts that are going to help you as your brain starts to throw up all kinds of thoughts to you about slow growth and why it's not good and you're not doing the right things and all the things. All right, we'll get into that a little bit more in a few minutes. But knowing these 2 concepts that I'm about to share with you will help you manage and understand your brain so much better when it wants to flip out about moving slowly. So the first one we're going to talk about is the motivational triad. The second one we're going to talk about is the concept of the gap and the gain. And that's a book, The Gap and the Gain. It's a book by Dan Sullivan and Darren Hardy. We'll put the link to it in the show notes. We're going to talk about those 2 key concepts right now for managing your brain through slow growth. So first of all, your motivational triad. Let's talk about it. Your primitive brain uses what's called the motivational triad to keep it going. Your motivational triad literally is that your brain wants to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and conserve energy. So it wants to be as efficient as possible. And all of this worked really well for primitive life, but it doesn't work so well for us now, but it still can come into play. So basically what it will see is anything that's too challenging, too much, too confusing, or a threat, and it will shut down your motivation to continue. So growing your staging business or growing your staging team and your business at that point when you're in that accelerate phase, this can be a time when you are super vulnerable to your primitive brain kicking in and demotivating you, because your brain is going to send up messages, and we'll talk about those in a minute, that are going to shut you down from wanting to do any of the work of marketing or, continuing to grow your team and, refine your services, because it's going to feel too hard. It's going to feel like it's too much work. It's going to feel like it's not working and all of that. So that's the first concept you need to understand. So when you find your brain sending out messages to you that are kind of negative, my friend actually calls it that her brain is verbally abusing her. So just so that you can get a visual of what that looks like. And I think it's actually a pretty good picture of what can go on for us. You're going to want to understand that your motivational, your primitive brain is at work here. What we need to do is engage your prefrontal cortex, your modern, sophisticated brain that has the capacity to plan and envision the future, because your primitive brain doesn't. That's where the gap and the gain comes in. So let's talk about this gap and gain way of thinking about things. So the first thing is that we should be measuring our results backwards versus forward. In the gap is when you are looking forward and you haven't met your goals. So that leaves you feeling lousy. You set a goal for yourself, you haven't met it. And of course, even though the goal is completely arbitrary and it's completely made up by us, if we don't achieve it, our primitive brain is like, yep, that's it, throws in the towel. When you're in the gain, you're looking backwards to see your progress. Okay. Or you look forward to see the opportunity in front of you. That's when you're in the gain. So when you're thinking about these 2 concepts, I want you to know that they are backed by neuroscience. So our brains are wired for expectations no matter how small. So if you are expecting in the morning, I'll give you a great example. My husband sets up the coffee pot every night before he goes to bed. And I get so excited because my brain is expecting in the morning. I just hit start and I have my coffee. Now, the mornings that I come down and it's not done, I get bummed out, like momentarily bummed out. It's the tiniest little expectation, but it's there. And the thing is that when we have an expectation, no matter how small it is, so if you set a goal for your business or yourself that you want to book X number of client appointments and you want to have each member of your team, managing X number of responsibilities, and it doesn't happen, our brains go back into that motivational triad where it kind of, gets frustrated. Because the cool thing is when we set expectations, dopamine is released in anticipation of that reward, but it falls dramatically when expectations aren't met. Again, no matter how small. So not only do you have a primitive brain in place that's got that motivational triad, but there's actual chemicals operating in your brain that are going to be at play to help you feel better or not so better. So our brains change physiologically based on whether we've met an expectation or not. But they also change physiologically based on our perceptions of the world around us. So they're super powerful at envisioning and making up the future for the better or the worse. And this can shape our ability to creatively problem solve and learn more quickly. Like, this is so wild, you guys. So when we think about setting an expectation and not meeting it, what we really want to do is set expectations not so high. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So when we measure our results forward and we don't have the ability to see or believe that we can achieve them, we can sit in the gap, which is that low dopamine cycle. So in your growth cycle of business, you may find yourself in the gap when the phone isn't ringing. You feel like you don't know what to do each day. You're frustrated because you aren't doing very much staging. But the truth is, in the beginning of your business, you will be marketing much more than you will be staging. So if you know that this is the expectation, is that you're going to be doing a lot more marketing than you are staging, this is actually going to help you manage that dopamine cycle in your brain. You have 3 jobs in the beginning in your growth cycle. And if you go back to episode number 2 of the podcast, I talk all about growth, meeting people in person and online, telling them what you do and how you help, and then staying in touch with them, either in person or online. This is a very needed part of your business. This is super important so that you learn how to sell what you do. You learn how to talk about what you do because people are going to ask you questions or about your process. How do you work? How do you charge? What are the steps? Like, all of that stuff, you're going to be able to get feedback in real time that you can then reincorporate into your marketing efforts. So this really helps you significantly. And the accelerating and slow growth in this phase allows you to think about and practice what it is you do. Evaluate each project you book to see if there are ways to improve, change, or tweak what you're doing. Practice and marinate on all the ways you can share what you do. You can work on social media and learn to start to see what gets traction and what doesn't. Do research on pricing and ways to create profit from the beginning. Research tools and software that you can use to help you with creating repeatable processes and systems. Learn from others that are ahead of you. In the accelerate phase of business, you can find yourself in the gap when your revenue isn't keeping pace with your operating expenses. This is huge because when you're in accelerating, very often your infrastructure is growing. In particular, if you have a vacant staging business, you're going to be likely increasing inventory expenditures. You would likely be increasing overhead expenditures, team expenditures, maybe vehicle expenditures. You'll pay more in insurance when you grow inventory because you'll have more to insure. So all of those things go up. So you may find your gap when you're there because the profit isn't keeping pace, because maybe you haven't been able to sit and see how you need to optimize your pricing to accommodate all that. You need to hire, or you need to hire more, and you feel like you don't have the bandwidth to train the revenue to support those hiring needs. And maybe you feel like you have enough business to support the hire at certain times of year, but not others. You're learning how to create a hiring process and you feel like you aren't getting it right. You may be hiring the wrong people for a little bit, or you may be wasting your time in your hiring process because of the way you have it set up. You're learning how to delegate and you feel like no one can do it better than you. You feel like you're always going and needing to check on your new team members' work. You might have to continue to oversee other people when you feel like you could do it faster yourself, and it might feel like it's slowing you down. And you feel literally overwhelmed by the number of roles you're occupying in your business, and it feels like you'll never get out of those roles. So, Oh my God. Like there's so much to think about there. So we don't want to sit in the gap too long. We want to get into the gain when we start feeling those things. So a couple of things that you can think about. First is strategic pessimism. Now, this is different than self-sabotage. Self-sabotage is when you don't take action so that you have something to blame for your lack of success. For example, I didn't do so well in that presentation in that real estate office, or I didn't book much business because I didn't really prepare very well for it, right? That's self-sabotage. Strategic pessimism is about lowering or managing your expectations. Assume that it will take time to get traction, but taking action will ultimately help you gain traction. Assume that you aren't going to get it right the first, second, or third time. Assume that practice and not getting it right is the exact path to getting it right and getting better at it, right? And when you are strategically pessimistic, like we talked about, your expectations are low for everything. So that dopamine, when you meet your expectations, those low expectations, your dopamine level is higher. So strategic pessimism is a great way for you to get out of the gap and get into the gain. So, I feel like I've just brain dumped all kinds of stuff on you, but basically it's key to understand your primitive brain's motivational triad and what happens to your brain in neuroscience when you're sitting in the gap, creating expectations that are too high for yourself, and what happens when you are strategically pessimistic and set lower expectations for yourself. So let's just talk about, to wrap it all up, the slow growth advantages overall. I've already touched on a few of them, but let's talk about just very key, broad brushed advantages no matter what stage of business you're in. Okay, so the first is when you understand that slow growth is a value to your business, your energy doesn't come across as desperate to land work. That's really important. You want to be in what Dan Kennedy calls the buyer energy. And that is basically the ability to walk away at any moment, that you are in the driver's seat. You don't need every client. You don't want every client. So when you are wanting to land projects, you'll set the expectation or when you want to land the projects and you're a little bit desperate to land projects, you'll set expectations that may not be sustainable in the long run, i.e. you might offer a price that's too low or a timeline that is too short, especially for those of you that operate vacant staging businesses. If you don't require that the client sign their client agreement and pay in full before you set a date on the calendar, because you want to move quickly and they've told you that they need to get it installed quickly, that's going to come across as desperate to land the work. If you let somebody know you can do a vacant install tomorrow and you've never worked with them before, that's going to set the expectation that they can have an install tomorrow. So you've got to think about these things and be more strategic. Growing slowly allows you time to evaluate. So with each service that you deliver, each time your team, does a project, if you are growing a little more slowly at that time, it allows you and your team to evaluate what worked and what didn't work on each project. And this is going to be really important as you're onboarding new team members, to have this time and space to do this. And literally you can head off any potential problems on future projects, or you can communicate, and learn with each project, versus you have, a burst of projects that all don't go well. And then people get frustrated and people give up and they may quit and all of that good stuff, or it just creates really bad team morale. Another advantage to slow growth, it allows time to create better processes. Business ideas need time to mature. And when you have space to think and review, it can lead to better ways of doing things. When you don't have the time to implement new ideas or even think about new ideas, they don't get done, and you can continue in a cycle of business growth that isn't particularly productive for you as you grow. You can make mistakes. You can provide services that aren't adequate. And again, it leads to frustration. Another slow growth advantage is it allows you time to do the financial analysis for each project. Knowing your numbers, your expenses, how long it takes to do every step of your process, how much overtime it takes is super, super important. I have a profitability predictor calculator for you at rethinkhominteriors.com/calculator. We'll put that in the show notes for you, that you can use to analyze each project, that can analyze how many projects you need to meet your profitability goals. It's amazing. But if you don't have time to do this, you can be operating at a loss for a very long time without realizing it. So it can seem like you're bringing in great revenue and you're kicking ass, but when your outflow or you're not setting your pricing properly and your overhead is outpacing your income, you're really jeopardizing your business health and well-being. Another slow growth advantage is it reveals where you want support as you grow. If you're growing if you're growing slowly, but you are noticing, for me especially in growth, I don't enjoy doing these aspects of the work. It will give you key identifiers for where you want to start hiring first. It allows you to get your ducks in a row. So when you decide that you need to hire new team members or anything like that, if you want to go through a hiring process, what do you need to have in place? What do you need? An application, job descriptions, a training and onboarding process for that team member. It allows you time to do that. If you want to launch a new service, how to structure it, how to market it, how to support it with your resources, all of those things. So those are some key advantages to growing slowly. So when you find yourself growing slowly, I want you to pat yourself on the back and be like, oh yeah, this is awesome. This allows me to do all this work that will help my business have a much stronger structure, be much more sustainable for the long term, because ultimately that's what we want for your business. That is more important than growing quickly. All right, everybody, that is your sip for the week. I hope you have an amazing week, and I will see you next time on the Staging Sips podcast. Bye for now. Thank you so much for listening to the Staging Sips podcast. If you love what you've learned here today and you want to go deeper and learn even more about how to market and grow your staging business more strategically, I would love for you to join us inside of the Rethink You Accelerate Mentorship Program. To get more details and get yourself on the wait list, you can go to rethinkhominteriors.com/waitlist. Looking forward to seeing you inside.